All right, good morning, friends. This morning what we're going to do is we've read some of these special stories this year at school, and they're called a fable. Fables are a very short story that often teach a lesson, okay? And they only have a few characters in the story, so there's not a whole lot of character in the story, because what it's really trying to do is teach a moral or a lesson, which are the same, a moral and a lesson. All right? And the neat thing about fables is they've been told over and over and over again. So this morning what we're going to do is you're going to listen. I'm going to read a fable that's in your Skills Buddy, and then we're going to talk about the lesson that was learned. And then I'm going to ask you on Flipgrid to tell me how the character learned their lesson. Okay, so we're going to read the fable now. You're going to listen. We're going to talk about what the lesson was that the character learned. But you're going to share with me how the character learned the lesson, okay? So you need to listen very carefully because I'm going to be looking for your answers on Flipgrid. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to open up your Skills Buddy book to page 70 in the pink heart and page 71 in the pink heart, okay? So I'm going to hold it up for a second. You can pause it while you get it, okay? And then I'm going to read the story, okay? Our story today, our fable today, I should say, is called The Milkmaid and Her Pail, okay? And remember, it's a fable. It's a story that's told over and over again, doesn't have a lot of characters in it, and it teaches a lesson. So I want you to listen very carefully to the story, and you are going to follow along with the pictures, just like we do at school, okay? All right, The Milkmaid and Her Pail. One day, a milkmaid was walking to town. So a milkmaid is someone who carries the milk from the farm, okay, to the town. She was carrying a pail of milk on her head. So look at the picture. Yeah, she has it on her head, right? That's pretty tricky. So she has it on her head. As she walked, she thought to herself, when I get to town, I am going to sell this milk. I will use the money to buy a fine hen. The hen will lay so many eggs. I will let the eggs hatch into chicks. And when the chicks are grown, I will take them to town and sell them. I will use the money to buy a new dress and ribbons to wear in my hair. How everyone will look and admire me. As the milkmaid imagined how beautiful she would look in her gowns and her ribbons, she smiled and tilted her head back. Well, if she tilted her head back, what do you think is going to happen to the milk on her head? Yep. When she tilted her head back, she forgot about the pail of milk on her head. The pail fell to the ground, and all the milk spilled out. Okay, so here she is. She's walking to town, and she's got that milk on her head, and she's dreaming of what's going to happen. She says when she goes to town, she's going to sell that milk. And as soon as she does, she's going to buy herself a fine hen, right? And then she starts talking about when the hens when they lay the eggs, she's going to grow them and let them be little chicks. And then when the chicks are grown, she's going to go and sell them. And then with all that money, she's going to buy a beautiful gown and ribbons for her hair. And everyone's going to be looking at her. And so she's thinking about all this as she's walking to town, right? And what's still on her head as she's walking to town? The pail of milk, right? It's still on her head. And as she's dreaming about all this stuff, what does she do? She tilts her head back, right? And when she tilts her head back, what happens? Because she tilted her head back, what happened? The milk spilled. Okay, so the pail fell to the ground, and the milk spilled all around her. Okay, so now let's think about this as we're answering some questions, okay? So a fable is a very short story that only has a few characters. How many characters does this story have? Just the one. the milkmaid, right? Because are the hens in this story? No, they're up in her mind. She's thinking about them, right? So the only character in this story is the milkmaid, right? Okay. Now the fable teaches a lesson or a moral, okay? And what is the moral of this fable? Well, the lesson is, or the moral is, she really shouldn't be thinking about all those other things she's going to do and buy before she actually gets to town and sells the milk, right? So her whole job was to go to town and sell this milk. She hasn't even gotten to town yet, and all of a sudden, she's thinking about all these other things, and then when she's thinking about them, what happens? She doesn't pay attention, and the milk spills, okay? So there's a little saying called, don't count your chickens before they hatch. So she was thinking about all those baby chicks in her head that she was going to buy before she actually even sold the milk. So it's like thinking about all those chicks before they hatch out of their eggs. You can't think about them yet because they haven't hatched out of those eggs yet. So if you start acting like you already have something, like she was dreaming about that gown and those ribbons, and she was imagining everybody looking at her. If you start thinking about those things before you already have them, you could end up with nothing, right? Because if the milk spilled all around her, does she have any milk to sell when she goes into town? Nope, she doesn't. She doesn't have her milk anymore, okay? So, fables are stories that have been told over and over again to teach a lesson. All right, so the milkmaid learned the lesson that she shouldn't count on things that she's going to get before she actually gets them, right? So she was thinking about all those other things. How did she learn that lesson? What happened in the story? What was she doing in the story that made her learn that lesson? What was she doing? What was she so busy doing in the story that she learned the lesson that she shouldn't have been thinking about all those things because it made her forget what she was supposed to be doing? Okay, so what was she doing in the story that helped her learn that lesson? What was she doing in the story that helped her learn that lesson that she shouldn't be thinking about things she's going to get before she actually gets them? What were the things she was thinking about? And then what happened? And it made her learn that lesson, okay? So I want you to think about it and try your best on Flipgrid to answer that question for me. How did the milkmaid learn her lesson in the story? What was she doing in the story? And then what happened because she was doing this that made her learn that lesson? Okay? All right. I'm looking forward to hearing you on Flipgrid. All right. Bye, friends.